Hi, I'm Peter Larkum, and this is Mentality Meets. So we're going to spend about 30 minutes on this call just to chat through some of the ideas around mental health. You know, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Why? Because mental health is impacting on all of us. There's no immunity. It can happen to anyone at any point, and sometimes for no apparent reason. Doesn't matter about what class you are, what age you are, what sex you are. Mental health is impacting on all of us, just the same as our physical health. So how do we begin to spot the signs and symptoms? How do we begin to get the help that we need? This is the question we're going to be exploring. So this is Mentality Meets. Welcome to Mentality Meets. If you are new to this, just to kind of give you a little bit of an overview as to what's going on. So during this next half hour, Alex and I will just be chatting, in essence, around all things mental health, you know, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But what that means is that it may trigger some personal stuff for you because we don't know who you are. We don't know anything about your personal history, whether you've experienced mental health illnesses in the past, whether you're experiencing them now. So we just need you to be very aware of what's going on in you. So look after yourselves. So a couple of things if you need to. If you find that this chat becomes quite personal and you need to reach out, in your chat bar, which we'll come to in a second, you can send a personal chat just to me and just say, Pete, struggling at the moment, can you help? And I'll try and get some help to you as we go through this. Other options are the Samaritans on 116-123. So don't be afraid to give the Samaritans a call if you need to. And also on Mentality Meets, we are promoting and pushing the Hub of Hope, which is a charity where if you go to hubofhope.co.uk, you can type in your postcode and it will show you the mental health provision in your local area, which for me means if you're supporting someone on the other side of the country, you can put their postcode in and then it will show you the mental health provision in their local area. It's a fantastic resource. There's also a 24/7 chat text messaging service called Shout, and you can text Shout to 85258. And when you do that, it will send a message across and somebody will get back in contact with you and help talk to you about the stuff you've got going on. So just be aware of your own vulnerability as you go through this, because during Mentality Meets, we don't really know what we're going to touch on and where this conversation takes us. We try and keep it as organic as we can. Yes, Alex and I have had a couple of conversations just to explore where this conversation goes. But you know what? When we're going live, we just don't know. So look after yourselves as we go through this. So let us introduce you to your chat bar. So at the bottom of your screen, you've got a little chat bar. And I would like to know, what is your name? Where in the country are you? And Alex, I think I asked you to come up with question number 3. What would you like to know about our audience today?
What I'd like to know about our audience today, how they're finding today on lockdown.
Okay, how are you finding today on lockdown? Is this a percentage or scale of 1 to 10? 1 being rubbish, 10, this is the best lockdown day I've ever had? Let's go for a scale of 1 to 10. How are you finding today in your lockdown world? So what is your name? Where in the country or where in the world are you right now? And how are you finding the lockdown process today on a scale of 1 to 10? Good, bad, ugly. Send out some messages and let us see what we've got out there. So how am I doing today? I've had a bit of a weird one on the scale of 1 to 10. So I think I'm going to go for about a 6, which is probably lower than normal for me. I'm normally on a kind of 7, 8 side of things. But yeah, definitely I'm trying to get my head around the kids going back to school conversation and whether I'm okay with that or not. And I don't quite know where I sit on the level of caution versus anxiety. And I don't think I'm being anxious. I think I'm being cautious. But it's doing my head in a little bit as I try and figure out where I stand on that conversation. So we've got Rob, who's kind of pinged in with West Sussex, and he's currently 7 out of 10. Andy in Southampton, a very strong 5. Pretty feeling meh. Meh. Melissa in Marlow, 8 out of 10. But this morning, flat and fed up. Olivia going for a 6 out of 10. I'm going for around a 6 out of 10. Andy, Alex, how are you doing on a scale of 1 to 10 then?
I'd say I'm 7 really, which is pretty consistent. 7 and 8 is where I like to spend most of my time. So yeah, 7 and feeling all right about that.
No, brilliant. We've got Sandeep in London, about 8 out of 10. Helen in Oxford, about 7. Sandra from St Albans, around a 6 out of 10. So a good kind of mix of 6 and 7, some 8s, some 5s, but no one just smacking it out of the park. You know, no one on a definite 10 out of 10. You know what? This is the best lockdown experience I've ever had. Because I don't think that exists, does it? Or am I just slightly pessimistic? I don't know. But Alex, what I would like to ask is, can you just give us a little bit of an introduction to who you are, what your world is at the moment, and also just a bit of your journey of kind of around mental health and kind of getting to where we are today. And then what we'll do is we'll ping you on our screen so everyone can see you, and then we'll kind of crack this conversation open. So Alex, just give us a little bit of an update for who you are.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. So I'm Alex Hyde. I work as an executive search consultant, which is kind of fancy words that recruitment consultants who deal with more senior roles like to label ourselves to make ourselves feel better and more important. And so that's what I do for a job. I effectively help large corporates find senior finance members of staff. So that's the job that I do. I am in Hertfordshire at the moment. We decided to kind of move out before lockdown was enforced from our apartment in Stoke Newington, North London, to St Albans to spend a period of time unknown as how long it would be with my fiance's parents and with our 10-month-old son. So we've been here, I think it's 10 weeks today. And if anyone had told me that I'd be spending 10 weeks working out of my parents-in-law's dining room at the start of this year, I don't think I'd have believed them, and they'd have had to give me quite a lot of money to do it. But it's been great. It's been really nice to spend time with my fiance, our 10-month-old son. It's been incredible to see him grow and develop. As much as he's become a very, very fun little guy to hang out with. And it's been really nice spending the time with my fiance's parents as well and getting to know them better. So, I mean, I think, lockdown has been an anxiety raising time, but feel very grateful for what I have. And I think a lot of that gratitude comes from the mental health, I guess, the lived mental health experience that I've been through over the last few years. So this time last year, I would have been 6 to 7 weeks into returning to work after a 4-month period of leave due to poor mental health. I spent, I think, 7 weeks of that under the care of an NHS crisis team. And I think in kind of January, February of 2019, when I first gone on sick leave, there was no way that I thought I'd ever return to Central London, Zone 1, ever again, let alone go back to the job that I do, and certainly not go back to the company that I work for, because I was so concerned that they, that one, I wouldn't be able to do the job because I thought I'd lost my mind, and that people wouldn't accept me after an experience of anxiety and depression as significant as the one that I went through. So a year on from that period, and life's in a much better place.
Wowza. Now let's just kind of throw out a statistic in this, because you were saying about that fear of going back to work and not quite knowing whether you'd ever be able to. Now, the statistic on this says that 80% of people who are on long-term sickness due to mental ill health don't return to work. So 80% of people get to a point where they just feel unable to return into any form of work. Out of the 20% that do return to work, only 10% will actually go back to where they had left, and 10% will find a job somewhere else. Because they don't know whether or not they can go back to their work colleagues and friends and other situations. So I just find it fascinating that in the context of what you were saying there about that kind of fear side of things, that there's been a massive journey in the context around statistics where you are one of the 10%, where actually not only you back into the central London, but also back into the job that you had left, which is just a fascinating statistic.
I didn't know that.
Quick question.
Yeah.
It's a big statistic, isn't it? So come on then, question out into the group. Have you ever had Monday morning sickness? You know, when you wake up on a Monday morning and you just aren't quite ready to get back to work and go to work, and so you phoned in sick with your sick voice.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Have you ever done that? So I want to have a quick honesty check in the chat bar. Have you ever had Monday morning flu where you phoned in sick on a Monday because you're not quite ready to go back to work, or not? Olivia, not yet. I like the not yet mindset of Olivia there. Not yet, but give it time, and I'm sure I'll have that Monday morning. Andy Bishop says no. Sandra says I haven't phoned in sick yet, but definitely had the feeling. So I know I've been off sick for over a year. Good job, Melissa. In the 10 years of me doing mental health training, I've missed 2 courses due to sickness over those 10 years, which has been a bit of a decent track record. Close, says Helen, but not done so in a previous job. So the reason I want to ask that question is because what I'm trying to get at is that feeling, you know, whether it's a Sunday night dread or a Monday morning thing, where there's almost like, I just want to pull the duvet back over our heads. Because in essence, that's the feeling that I'm kind of picking up on what you were saying, Alex, about kind of that not wanting to, not being able to. And yet, if we all have that feeling, then actually we begin to realize that there is other stuff going on in the background. So I suppose kind of my question for you then, Alex, is what was it? Can you kind of put your finger on what it was that helped you and pushed you to a place where you were able to? Because you said that you were off for a fairly big period of time.
And it's interesting as well, because I'd fall into another 10% of the statistics that you mentioned a minute ago. At a previous employer, when I'd had to take some time off there to deal with poor mental health, and actually the way that was managed meant that I did return, but then decided to leave at a later point because I didn't feel as though it had been managed particularly well. And I think it's been interesting to live through kind of both those experiences of going back, but then moving on, and then having a repeat of poor mental health, which I really hoped I never would have again. And then the way that my line manager in particular supported my return and enabled me to find a way of working that enabled me to stay on top of my mental health. So the realization that I kind of landed on now was that there was never a problem with the job that I was doing, and there was just a problem with the way that I was doing it, and that was largely due to the expectations I was putting on to myself and around where my performance should be, and kind of working in a way that wasn't sustainable. And so if I were to look at what helped me return, firstly the love and support of family and friends who were there for me in an incredible way. But then going to the work setting, my boss, and it's much the same thing really, was just incredibly kind and supportive. I think it really helped that my company is very small. There's only about 35 of us, and we don't have a dedicated HR function. So when I started to call in sick, he didn't have an HR manager or an HR director to go to. He had to think about what was the right thing to do as a human in that situation. I really think on his feet, and I'm really fortunate that he's a lovely, lovely man, and responded in a very kind and compassionate way, which was to give me all the space that I needed to manage communication with the other members of the executive team, the executive board that he sits on, in a way that kind of paved or enabled my return to happen at all. The difference the second time round, or the difference in returning this time as well, was that the guidance that came back from our EAP, our support provider, was actually really followed in terms of a staggered return to work, a phased return to work in terms of intensity, duration of days and number of days worked in the week, so that it enabled me to kind of smoothly transition back in. Whereas the previous time when I returned to work, it wasn't really followed at all. There was a big disconnect between what the AP was saying, whereas disconnect between the AP, HR, and then my line manager. So it never really felt as though that was communicating. I've been given kind of medical advice to kind of be managed in a certain way, and that wasn't then followed through with. Whereas my boss this time around was extremely good at managing that for me.
Wow, sir. So in essence, kind of what I'm hearing out of the context of that is that the process that worked was not only being able to talk to your manager. So that's kind of point one, question out to the group. Would you feel comfortable if you are struggling with your mental health to talk to your manager? Okay, just a quick yes, no, that would be good. So not only were you able to feel able to talk to your manager about it, but the fact that there was then an opportunity to engage with your employee assistance program, and there was a cohesion between the employee assistance program, the step return, and coming back to work. Whereas what you were saying before is there seemed to be a disconnect between what one person was saying, what the company was saying, and then what your line manager was saying, and that discontinuation. And so the questions coming out are, would you feel comfortable talking to your manager? But also, do you feel that the support you would be given by your company would actually be a positive one or a negative one? Now, this is a difficult hypothetical question to answer, but I think some of us know from the employers that we have had in the past versus the ones that we may be having now, whether there are good structures or not, good relationships or not. And so, yeah, those are my questions. Would you feel comfortable chatting to your manager about it? And would you feel supported if you had, or if you did? So this is kind of put on that it would depend on the manager and the working culture. It does, doesn't it? Totally depends on whether there is a relationship there. Sandeep says, my manager knows about my mental health and feel like I haven't been supported as much as I'd like to. So therefore unlikely to speak. But I think training is definitely required. And I think that's a very true echo, Sandeep, from a lot of people around that desire I want to be talking about it. We're encouraged to, aren't we? You know, talk more about our mental health, get the conversation out there. And yet sometimes we feel like we're trying, but it's just not being met the right way. So I suppose kind of, Alex, in the context of this kind of COVID process and the lockdown process, what are there any kind of tips or words of advice that you can give us for how we find the right people within our organizations? Because it may or it may not be our manager, it may or may not be our HR department, it may, or any kind of ideas of kind of how do we find those positive relationships? That's a difficult question to throw at you. Sorry,
but then it's a difficult question. But then it's not really in the simplicity of the response, which is, I think, you know, when we are put into difficult positions, or when we are struggling with our mental health, the thing that we need to do is to talk to people, and you need to be able to talk to people that you feel as though you can trust. And I think we need to have more difficult conversations with line managers who we think may not respond as well as we'd like them to, regarding our mental health. Because if we're not telling people who have got a duty of care over us, then you're alone and isolated within that. So I think firstly, I'd seek out people in your organisation that you know that you've got closer relationships to, and talk to them about struggles that you're experiencing. We found that it's worked really well at my company, just to share in our team catch-ups that we do most mornings, and if we're struggling with anything, and that could be something at home, something at work, more often than not, challenges of home meeting with work. So I think it's fair to say that everyone at the moment will have likely struggled with their mental health at some point in the last couple of months, because we'll have been inevitably stressed. And if you haven't been stressed by the last couple of months, then there's probably something wrong with you. So I think there's a really I think there's something very unique about this kind of shared experience, that we're all going through something at the moment that will impact on people in lots of different ways. Unless we talk about what those different ways, the impact of those that has been, then we're missing an opportunity to open this conversation up. I also think line managers will often respond better to conversations around mental health than one might think they would. And that's always, often been a concern for me when considering my own mental health. But actually, when I have opened up to people, the response has been significantly better than I feared it might be. And I think, Sandeep, going to your point around not feeling as though you've been supported as much as you like, and I think training is required. There's a huge amount of support and resource out there now that is available to companies. So rather than kind of approaching the conversation with I think we need to do more and leaving it to them to go to it, it's actually going up with a range of different options, probably a range of different price points, and to say, look, these are the things that we could look to engage with. And if they they then choose not to take it further from there, look, I appreciate that's in a difficult situation and scenario to be in, but there are others out there who are struggling with the same thing and can support.
I I just think there's so much in there. I'm trying to kind of unpick different elements of what you say. But first of all, let's kind of go and see what the chats are saying. So Rob's saying I would now, but not necessarily would have done in the past. And Melissa says managers are trained in the commercial sense and kind of being a line manager, but it doesn't always make them the right person to go to get access to the support that you may need, especially when we're talking about mental health. And then Rob kind of agrees with that statement. And he says, I think there might be a bow wave of stress. I like that phrase. I want to try and understand what bow wave means in the context of what you're saying, Andy. So if you can, just give me a little bit of an understanding on that. Of stress, anxiety cases with the lockdown easing and going back to work with no kind of graduated return. Rob says it takes bravery and vulnerability to approach your employer. A mental health first aider role is an important one that helps fill that gap. So there's definitely this sense, and I'm guessing people understand or have heard of mental health first aid and mental health first aiders. So I'm a mental health first aid trainer. So I train the mental health first aiders in companies. And I think there's a fantastic first step to be able to go and talk to your mental health first aiders or mental health ambassadors. But their job then is to still try and signpost you in the right direction within the company, but also within other charities that are around. So the Employee Assistance Programme is the place that we'd encourage most people to go to first, if the company has one, to be able to get to. So Andy's just saying the bow wave is the wave that breaks at the front of a boat as it cuts through the water. Oh, nice. Okay. And then Melissa agreeing with with what Helen was saying earlier about managers are sometimes the cause of the problem and why workers are often struggling. And there's so much going on within the culture of an organization that either creates a sense of support and acceptance within the world of mental health. There's a lot of culture around mental health first aid is just one of those tick boxes, and where we access the help and support and how we manage to go forward in this. So quick question out onto the floor. Does your company have mental health first aiders? Let's kind of go with that as a question. Do you have mental health first aiders? So Andy's saying, I liken talking to the manager as asking a school time crush out for a first date and the anxiety that it creates. That's a great emotional connection, that first time of asking someone out and the anxiety that it creates. And that feeling when you're trying to share with your employer that you are struggling with your mental health. Too many companies state they have an open door policy, and yet it's just not reality. So Rob says, yes, they got mental health champions. Sandeep says, no mental health first aid at her firm. Helen says, not at the minute, but they're thinking of looking into it. So although mental health first aid is a fantastic organisation and out there, not all companies are engaging with it, and I find that interesting, just because I am a trainer. And no, not wanting to plug it, but if you're looking for training, I know a guy. Okay. Risk assessment is the key around being able to approach people and talk to people about their mental health. So Andy, before this chat, well, gosh, we've got 4 minutes left. Gosh, it's 3:26 already. 4 minutes left of the chat. In that case, let's scrap that as a conversation and go top tips, Andy. What are you currently doing? Because earlier you were saying about being able to stay on top of your mental health, and that idea, let's go back to the waves of kind of being able to surf at this time with all this stuff going on, and just being able to stay surfing on it. What are your top tips? What's helping you just kind of stay above the overwhelming anxiety, which is literally right here, and those fears and those worries and the doubts and all of that negativity, that if we were to turn around and see the size of the wave, go, oh my gosh, how do you, what is it that you are practicing, that you're getting involved with to help you stay in a healthy place?
Yeah. So I'm assuming that's for me, not to Andy, who is also on.
No, that's, oh no, sorry, Alex. I keep on saying Andy. It's because I'm reading your messages, Andy. I'm so sorry. Alex, to you. I think Andy's just gone, oh my gosh, am I answering this? Sorry, Alex.
Yeah, no, I thought so. Well, I mean, it turns out having a kind of an anxiety-fueled mental health crisis is really kind of quite helpful in kind of teaching you tips as to how you survive and kind of get through, hopefully, successfully a pandemic that seems to be kind of being led by our government even more dangerously by the week. So what's really helping me is just slowing down a lot, and that's been something that I've had to take into the work setting. And a lot in the past was that when I was returning from my mental health crisis, there was a tendency to want to run again at 1,000 miles an hour and work in the same way that I thought had been very successful before. And actually the answer to it has really been to slow down. And so I'm trying to really build that into my working style of working from home and being kind to myself. And that starts with carving out some time that is just for me every day, and that's usually at the start of the day. I do 45 minutes to an hour of meditation and yoga, and so total mental health kind of cliche here as to the things that will help, but that hugely helps me every morning, just to kind of take some time and acknowledge what's going on within me that day. What am I getting kind of stressed or worked up about? Are those stresses and anxieties valid? If they are, then I'll do something about them. If I understand what that stress and anxiety is and deem that it's not worthy of me stressing and worrying about so much, I'm able to park it to one side. And if kind of 10 years ago anyone had told me that I'd be on a kind of webinar talking about yoga and meditation every morning, I'd have never believed it. But it's been incredibly beneficial. Having open lines of communication with people that I work with as to what kind of challenges or stresses there might be on the home front that day or that week, so that they're aware of when I may be around or less available. And then the same back to family that I'm living with as well. So if there are 2 or 3 hour blocks where I really need to be focused, it's communicating that time so that everyone knows kind of what the stresses are, rather than feeling as though I've got to hold it together for everyone and be everything to everyone the entire time, because I just can't do that. So it's pretty basic and simple stuff, but it really kind of stems from looking at how do I manage myself as well as I possibly can? How do I manage my own state of mind, my own anxieties as best as possible, so that when and kind of if tension does arrive or when difficult things do pop up, I'm better able to deal with them. So yeah, I hope that helps. But it's it's simple stuff that's worked well for me so far.
I think that works wonderfully. So last chat out into the conversation as I close this up. And you've been talking about meditating, slowing down, and yoga. What do you do? What is it you do to help yourself to stay balanced inside, calm your mind, and stay in a healthy mental health place? Stick that down as a last chat, because we are at 3:31, which means it is now my opportunity to say, Alex, thank you so much for your time today. So this has been Alex Hyde. I have been Pete Larkum. You have been fantastic. Thank you for joining us on Mentality Meets. One last thing to be aware of. As of today, we are going to just Thursdays for Mentality Meets. So I have been running Mentality Meets on a Monday and a Thursday every week. Last week I did it every day, and I've come to realize that I need a bit of a life outside of Mentality Meets. So we're going to just knock it to Thursday. So 3 o'clock to 3:30 every Thursday from now on. If you want it to come back to Mondays, you'll need to let me know. But I'm going to try that from here because I guess just because we don't quite know how long this lockdown process is going on for. I kind of did this as a little bit of a, let's do this through lockdown. A little bit like the PE guy, Joe Wicks. I wonder if he's regretting that decision that he'd do this for however long lockdown is going on for. It could be doing it for the next 5 years, you know. But anyway, it's gone 3:30. So I just want to say thank you so much. Take care. God bless. And bye-bye now. Okay, that was our official ending. What are people saying around what they do? So yoga, running lots, wishing to continue health and enjoyment. So running lots, daily walks and yoga, meditating, Tai Chi, and eat clean. I don't know what that means. Walking the dog, colouring, dancing, talking, long walks, sleeping, watching films, alone time, family time, and then lots of thanks. Going on to the end. So thank you so much for your time today, Alex. I've thoroughly appreciated it. So it's just us now left on the call. So if you would like to unmute yourself and join us on this chat, you're very welcome to do so. So we've got we've got Melissa, we've got Andy, and we've got another couple of non-video participants who can join the conversation if you like, through Rob and Sandra if you're still in the call. But Alex, thank you for all of that. That was a brilliant session. Any questions from anyone else?
I'd just like to say thank you, Alex. That really resonated with my situation. A couple of 3 years ago, I had 7 months off in a very similar circumstance. And the statistics as well, Peter. I went back to work for the same employer. So yeah, it was difficult. Definitely difficult. So yeah, a lot of what you said there really resonated with my situation. That was a repeat kind of episode as well. So thank you very much, Alex. That was really
encouraging. Thank you. Thank you. Right, in that case, I think it's time for me to actually shut this conversation off. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. Take care. Alex, good luck.
Take care.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.